We have the certified timber. Composite wood products also has some requirements. Recycled materials, Dubai Central Laboratory has done a lot of studies on the recycling of the materials. We have done some study on the recycling of the construction waste, and we evaluated the properties of the aggregate which are used from the recycled construction waste, and we have found that these aggregate can be used in certain applications, non-structural concrete, maybe some lower layer of the pavement, and so on. We have done also some other work on the recycled of the asphalt mixture. Now, I will come to the listing of some of the green building regulations. We have regulation number 30401 about the urban heat islands. It is for the paint and coating, and the required major test is the SRI, or the Solar Reflective Index. Regulation 30403 about the light color on the outside of the building for the light reflective value of the paint and coating on the external walls. We have certain values. Low emitting materials for paint and coating, the required test is the volatile organic compound. The low emitting materials for adhesive and sealant, again, the VOC in sealant and adhesives. Minimum envelope performance requirement, here the thermal insulation and the thermal blocks. Thermal acoustical insulation material, again, density, required test, thermal conductivity, compressive strength, etc. Certified or accredited timber, one of the regulations we have about the certified timber. Asbestos, no, the material should not include any asbestos. Lead or heavy metal containing material, there are certain requirements on the lead and the heavy metals, and you know what are the problem of the lead and heavy metals which are caused to these materials, so we have limits for them. Recycled content, we have certain requirements for the recycled material to be used in the green buildings. Regional materials, there is an encouragement for the use of the regional materials. Composite wood, there are certain certification for the composite wood. And these are some of the tests I am going to list that Dubai Central Lab can do on the thermal insulation. We have here the thermal transmittal properties by hot plate in order to determine the K value, the thermal conduction. It is the most important properties in the green or the thermal insulation materials, the K value. We have another equipment in order to determine the K value. It is called the flow meter. Dimension and density of a block and board insulation. Thickness and density. Density and dimension. Water vapor transmission. If the thermal insulation is allowing the water vapor, then it is not thermal insulation anymore. It is thermal conduction. Long-term water absorption. Dimensional stability, it's also an important property. Moisture content. Compressive strength. Tensile strength parallel to the faces. And we have also some fire testing on the thermal insulation material. This is for the rock wool. We have the ignitability test for the polyurethane and similar material. And then we have the oxygen index for the polystyrene. Solar reflective index I was talking about, the SRI, you need your material or coating to reflect the heat away from the building. The light reflectance value, again for the paint on the walls. Formaldehyde content on the coating. The lead in paint by optical emission. VOC content, again VOC. And finally, I come to the certification of the materials and the products. You know, without having approved material in the market, it will be so difficult to implement the green building regulations I was talking about. Testing is important, but in order to make it easy for the manufacturer and the supplier, we have established a system in order to certify these materials and in order to make it easy for the manufacturer and the supplier, and also easy for the end user. Because if the end user see the mark of Dubai Municipality or Dubai Central Lab on the different products, he doesn't have to worry about it. He doesn't have to look at the specifications. He doesn't have to retest it again. Now, we are having 4 systems for the certification of the materials and the product. 3 of them for the material and the product which are covered by a standard specification. Now, somebody may ask, what about the new materials, the materials which are not covered by standard specification? Then we have the 4th one, which is called the technical approval. So the technical approval is for the products which are not covered by standard specification. The first one is the factory system. The second one, the factory, we visit the factory and assess it, take sample, and make sure that its a product is fulfilling the requirements of the specifications. Batch, the supplier or the manufacturer can have certain quantity. We are taking sample of that batch, test it, and give it a certificate. We have a System 1 certification. It means, again, similar to the batch, where a sample is collected from a certain lot and a certificate is issued. It is a little cheaper than the factory and the other one. The technical approval, I already explained it. Now, this is some photo of the factory assessment in which our assessors, they are visiting the factories and they are collecting samples. After, of course, they are checking the quality system of the different factories. This is the Dubai Central Lab Product Conformity Mark as it is compared. Of course, there are many other international product mark, if you like, or quality mark that are put on the products and the materials. Dubai Central Laboratory Mark is one of them. This is the mark, and this is example of some materials and the products where Dubai Central Lab Mark is there. Of course, in order to facilitate and to make it easy for the manufacturer and the supplier, we have put all the information about the manufacturer and supplier and their products, which are certified. We have put them in the website where everybody can look at it and see the status of the certification of certain material or certain product of different suppliers. This is the list of certification scheme for green building materials product for every material and the regulation as compared to the green building regulation, and what are the certification scheme applicable to that particular regulation. Here we have the list I was talking about, the list of the manufacturer and the detail of the contact of this manufacturer, where it is very easy for the end user to refer to these products and to the manufacturer. We have here for system 1. The previous one, it was for the factory. This one is for system 1. And we have Dubai Central Lab is having its own website. All of you are welcome to look at it. And with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
I just wanted to offer up the opportunity. If anybody has any questions for Mr. Elian, this would be a good time.
As I understand, you have two types of certification, material and product. What do you have to own that for this product?
Okay, thank you very much. But can you please say your name and where are you working?
My name is Amjad from MG Electronics.
Okay, you're welcome, thank you. We are having 3 or 4, as I said, 4 scheme for certification of materials and products. You know, we have materials and products and something called system. For system, it is a heavy one. We are giving it to Mr. Ahmed here from the building department. So the approval of the building system, that's with the building department. But if we are talking about the constituents of that system, and I mean by the constituents, the materials or the products, blocks, thermal insulation, steel bar, all that, we are having the certification. Dubai Central Lab is providing the certification. We are carrying out the testing required for certification at Dubai Central Lab. But in case the testing is not available, then we can outsource it at any other laboratory, provided that lab is accredited against ISO 17025. So the confidence is there.
Hi, my name is Dr. Iman Assad from the Ministry of Interior's Engineering Department. I just want to ask about your ambition to retrofit buildings, and it came to my mind these high-rise buildings. If you want to, and you mentioned how to retrofit, insulate the building envelope. Will it be possible? I mean, how can you convince the owners? Is it going to affect the elevation, the look of these buildings? Is it feasible?
Well, I believe this point has been spoken in details by Mr. Abdullah Rafi', and I believe I'm not fully aware. There is Al-Ittihad company. It is on the Emirates level or in UAE level is going to do that, and Dubai municipality is studying different possibilities of rewarding the owner of the existing buildings so that they can go for greening their existing building, if I may say. Moreover, the building department has requested Ajman University in order to carry out a study with regard to that important subject, which we feel it is important, and the municipality is doing its best in order to work on the existing buildings. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Anil. I'm from Gulf Advanced Lighting. Just wanted to ask, in the standards and regulations, is there a requirement also for lighting and lamps?
Yes.
For example, on compact fluorescents or LEDs?
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, when we established the 79 regulations, there was a committee, and it's called the Green Building Committee, headed by one of the Assistant Director General of Dubai Municipality. And members, a few members of that committee was from DEWA, Dubai and Electricity, Dubai Water and Electricity Authority. And yes, there are requirements for the lighting, for the elevators and oscillators. They are detailed. And if I can have your business card, I can mail you the English version of these 79 green building regulations. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Elian. And next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Dr. Paul Shipp. Mr. Shipp is a Principal Research Associate at the USG Corporate Innovation Center in Libertyville, Illinois, where he directs research and advises management on strategic issues, trends, and technologies relating to building products, sustainable construction, building codes, and standards. Dr. Shipp.
And good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have an opportunity to speak with you here and to visit this beautiful city, which so exemplifies the 21st century. What I would like to talk with you about today is the role, the function of how standards facilitate and support green building, and we have heard already a number of important points on that area. I'd like to start with the definition of sustainable development, which I'm sure all of you are well familiar with by now, that sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And what this is a starting point. This is our challenge. It's a reminder that no building or project is complete unless we've not only satisfied the immediate requirements of the purpose for which that building is built, but also we've taken into consideration its long-term impacts, social, economic, environmental, throughout the lifetime of that structure, extending into the point where it has reached the end of its planned lifetime and is either repurposed or recycled or in some other way is changed. It's entirely appropriate that buildings should be a subject of sustainability because they play such an important role in these key issues. Here in the United States, 41% of the total energy consumption is associated with the operation of buildings. That makes buildings a larger sector than transportation, a larger sector even than industry. Therefore, addressing sustainability in buildings is one of the most important things that we can do for providing and ensuring a more sustainable world in the future. Now, that brings us to the question of what makes a building green. And obviously, I would say the first and foremost thing is one has to measure the economic benefit, the economic value that comes from it. And in many of these lists, you'll see this listed as last, but I am inclined to list economics first because if it doesn't meet its specific purpose and function and do it in a way that meets the cost constraints and operate properly, it's not going to be a sustainable structure. It ultimately will not be maintained and ultimately will fall short of the goals. But certainly that's just the starting point. The next thing is we need to assess how it impacts the occupants and society itself and what benefits accrue from the construction of the building, both in terms of health, safety, and comfort of the occupants of the building, and also in terms of the social benefits that the community and society as a whole derives from that structure. Lastly, and perhaps one of the most difficult areas to evaluate, and one where standards play a very important role in providing the metrics for measuring this, is we need to assess how does this building impact the environment? What are the impacts that it have that ultimately deal with the more global, the larger issues of climate change, ozone destruction, but also the regional and local issues of habitat destruction, pollution of air, water, and soil, and depletion of non-renewable resources. These three items have been termed the triple bottom line for 21st century business, and certainly a sustainable structure will have to provide and display benefits in all of these areas. But I think anyone who has worked in this area has come to realize that there are no simple, easy answers. There are very few win-win type of choices that are presented. Almost every time you're assessing a sustainability measure, one has to take into consideration that there are other consequences that may or may not be desirable. And therefore, one looks to green buildings not as an absolute, but a building which minimizes the negative impacts and maximizes the beneficial impacts of that particular structure. And what constitutes a negative or positive impact depends very much upon the context in which, how the building is used, where the building is situated, what the local or regional situation conditions are. In order to do that, ultimately a life cycle analysis must be done in order to evaluate the overall impacts of that building. This requires metrics, and that in turn is where we have a critical and vital need for good standards that provide the necessary support for us to do environmental product declarations and product category rules. Let me talk, just one last thing I wanted to bring up is product certification and building commissioning is an equally important aspect. The first, the areas where I was talking about earlier address the design of the building, address the construction of the building, but there also needs to be in place, as has already been mentioned today, a means of assuring that what is designed is what is actually built. There also needs to be an opportunity to monitor and follow the performance of the building. Green building is very much a new developing science for us all. And we have already learned some very hard lessons where things have not fulfilled their expectations, and we've also learned other areas where benefits exceed expectations. The only way we know what works and what doesn't work ultimately is we have to commission the building, and we have to periodically recommission it to do the measurements to find out whether or not our expectations are being fulfilled. In the area of green building and sustainability, this is particularly important because these are very complicated structures with many interacting factors that have to be considered. Now, I mentioned life cycle assessment has to be done as a means of measuring the performance. That is simply a systematic evaluation of the environmental aspects and potential impacts of a product, process, or service through all stages of its life cycle. And that product could be something as simple as a piece of gypsum board manufactured for it, or the product can be an entire building. And in fact, all along the way, life cycle assessments are necessary to evaluate how the systems work. It entails a complete inventory of the relevant energy inputs and material inputs and environmental releases, and evaluation of the potential environmental impacts that they provide. And it must be done at all stages of that product or process, from raw material acquisition through the production or construction of the product itself, especially through its entire lifetime of usage, and ultimately consideration of the end-of-life treatment, the final disposal of that product or process in the end. Now, this is an extremely complex process. There are many choices, many options that are faced in trying to put this together, and therefore we need to break this down in terms of the materials that go into the system, into environmental product declarations, the EPDs. And this is a means of evaluating the impact of the product on the environment. It entails collecting and assessing quantifiable environmental data based on life cycle assessment and third-party verification of that product. It's analogous to the nutrition label.